I did it! I read Anna Karenina this summer, and in this video I'm going to be sharing 8 reasons why I think you should give this classic a try. Let's talk about the cover. This is the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition of Anna Karenina. The design is by Tom Brown, the photograph is by Dana Gallagher, and the hand tinting, which we see in like the purple of the orchids in this photo, was done by Beth Middleworth. This photograph shows a woman's knees, and then there is a bunch of orchids that are gathered on her lap. That's really all there is to it. And then we have some nice typography. There's a choice here to use a lowercase a for the last name Karenina, and the lowercase n's, which does kind of have like that Russian vibe to it. It's very easy to read, which kind of speaks again to the contents of this translation. It is very easy to read. The thing that I don't like about this image is that the kind of sexual overtone that it gives, and while how society treated men who had an affair versus women who had an affair is very strong in this novel, it's not the only theme or subject that we're following, and so I kind of dislike that about it. The covers of Anna Karenina that I particularly like actually connect more to the idea of society being a grand stage for all of these relationships and tensions and emotions, and everything being played out almost like an opera. There are at least 2 instances in the book where we are in a theater with the characters, and so that allusion to the stage and to the production of theater I think works really well, as in the design by Corlin Bickford Smith, where we have the opera glasses creating the pattern on the cover. And then there is another cover that shows Anna, and the edges of the lace of her dress are all of these different figures in silhouette. So it's that perception of people seeing her character and her withdrawing from society because of her choices to be part of this affair. Anna Karenina is not the only character in this novel. She's not even the only main character in this novel. And so I love that homage to the other characters that are playing their part of this story. Here are 8 reasons that I think you should read this book, whether or not you like the cover, and maybe you've had some initial perception about this story that turned you off of reading it. I want to encourage you to give it a second look. Reason number 1 is it is an easy to read classic, and there are a lot of different translations to choose from. This edition is translated by Richard Pevier and Larissa Volokonsky, and I thought they did a really magnificent job of keeping true to Tolstoy's intent of the text while also making it very approachable for modern readers. And so there was no point in the book where I felt slowed down by the language. I'll touch more on that later, but being bored was not something that I would fault with the translation. It is not a dry classic, it is actually filled with emotion. If you want a book where the character's emotion just leaps off the page at you and you really feel for them, you might even feel some memories coming back from highs and lows in your own life as you witness what the characters are going through. Characters who are experiencing different desires, both good and bad, and how they respond to those. They have successes and failures, and you're accompanying them through both. In addition to trials and suffering, they also experience some really happy moments. So it's a very balanced picture of life. You get to see their insecurities and hopes develop along the way. And Vronsky stood up, his eyes searching for a table. Kitty got up from her little table, and as she passed by, her eyes met Levin's. She pitied him with all her heart, the more so as she was the cause of his unhappiness. If I can be forgiven, forgive me, her eyes said. I'm so happy. I hate everybody, including you and myself, his eyes answered, and he picked up his hat. If you love me as you say you do, she whispered, make it so that I am at peace. His face lit up. Don't you know that you are my whole life? But I know no peace and cannot give you any. All of myself, my love, yes. I cannot think of you and myself separately. You and I are one for me, and I do not see any possibility of peace ahead either for me or for you. I see the possibility of despair, of unhappiness, or I see the possibility of happiness, such happiness. Isn't it possible, he added with his lips only, but she heard him. And what he saw then he afterwards never saw again. He was especially moved by children going to school, the gray blue pigeons that flew down from the roof to the pavement, and the white rolls sprinkled with flour that some invisible hand had set out. These rolls, the pigeons and the two boys, were unearthly beings. All this happened at the same time. A boy ran up to a pigeon and, smiling, looked at Levin. The pigeon flapped its wings and fluttered off, sparkling in the sun amidst the air trembling with snow dust, while the smell of baked bread wafted from the window as the rolls appeared in it. All this together was so extraordinarily good that Levin laughed and wept from joy. "Well, tell me, what must I do to set you at peace? I'm ready to do anything to make you happy," he said, moved by her despair. "There's nothing I won't do to deliver you from such grief as now, Anna," he said. Never mind, she said. "I myself don't know. Maybe it's the lonely life, nerves. Well, let's not speak of it. How was the race? You haven't told me," she asked. She felt that alongside the love that bound them, there had settled between them an evil spirit of some sort of struggle, which she could not drive out of his heart, and still less out of her own. Another reason you should read this book is because of the universal themes that it contains, greatly in part to those emotions that I just mentioned. This book is a treasure trove if you want to annotate, whether that's just a little or a lot. One thread that you might want to follow is happiness, and what that looks like for different characters, how they express that they are happy or unhappy throughout the story, and you can follow that from the very first paragraph all the way to the end of the novel if you wanted to. There is the theme of false versus true forgiveness, the satisfaction of family life, different kinds of suffering, and the sanctification or transformation, if you will, of a person as they pursue meaning throughout their life. If you only picked one of these to observe as you progress through the story, I would recommend that theme of happiness, because that's one that you can spot from the first paragraph of page 1 all the way through the end of the novel. The next reason you should read this book is because the plot revolves around relationships. I think that's one of the easiest things to connect to as a reader, and it really helps you engage with the characters, you feel for what they're going through. This plot is very relationship based. Hopefully it doesn't come as a major shock to you, but this plot resolves around a scandalous affair between a single man and a married woman. Anna and Count Vronsky are infatuated with each other, and they decide to pursue a romance despite the societal judgment that will be held over them moving forward because of that decision. They carry on this semi-secret affair, and when they're found out, they ignore those practical and societal consequences in order to continue their illicit romance. As the novel progresses, the consequences are their isolation from family, from society, and morality. And those consequences just continue to close in throughout the novel at an increasingly faster tempo. We have an example of love within a love triangle. We also have some really strong examples of friendships. It said of Vronsky, he knew only that he had told her the truth, that he was going where she was, that the whole happiness of life, the sole meaning of life, he now found in seeing and hearing her. So while we have this forbidden romance, there is also another troubled marriage at play. There's also a young couple where the young single woman has rejected the nice guy because she thought that the bad guy seemed more interesting. She wishes she could go back and change her decision, and maybe she still has time. I won't tell you, you'll have to read the book yourself to find out. Then we have some friendships. There are some really solid friendships that progress throughout this story, and not all of the people in them are healthy, but they are still friends. And so there's a lot about the love of friendship in this novel, as well as romantic love and family love. Levin and Oblonsky, that is the first friendship that we're actually introduced to in the story, so it's not too much of a spoiler. Levin was almost the same age as Oblonsky and was his familiar not only in the Champagne line. Levin had been the comrade and friend of his early youth. They loved each other in spite of the difference in their characters and tastes, as friends love each other who become close in early youth. But in spite of that, as often happens between people who have chosen different ways, each of them, while rationally justifying the other's activity, despised it in his heart. To each of them it seemed that the life he led was the only real life, and the one his friend led was a mere illusion. They are still in company with one another, they were childhood friends, but they don't really respect each other in the way that they might have when they were children. There is that mirage of friendship, and there's a lot of distrust, and they think of themselves as better than the other person. The next reason I have for you is that if you like a book with an unlikable protagonist, you will probably like this one. Your feelings for all of the characters are going to change throughout the novel. None of these characters stay stagnant. They are always changing. Most of them express the desire to change for the better. Some see the opportunity to change, but not all of them will actually do anything about it, which is pretty true to life, honestly. You might start off really liking the main character of Anna Karenina, her kind of mysterious personality and the way that she shows up in a room, and the way that she wants to be the main character of her own story. And even if you start off that way, you might end up finishing the book and wonder, was Anna a villain of this story? Anna Arkadyevna read and understood, but it was unpleasant for her to read, that is, to follow the reflection of other people's lives. She wanted too much to live herself. When she read about the heroine of the novel taking care of a sick man, she wanted to walk with inaudible steps around the sick man's room. When she read about a member of parliament making a speech, she wanted to make that speech. When she read about how Lady Mary rode to hounds, teasing her sister-in-law and surprising everyone with her courage, she wanted to do it herself. But there was nothing to do, so fingering the smooth knife with her small hands, she forced herself to read. Another reason that this is a good one to pick up is if you want to learn about the author, because he really put himself in the character of Levin. Tolstoy's wife, Sofia Andreevna, told him, "Levin is you, Lyova, minus the talent." And then she said, "Levin is an impossible man." Because the character of Levin is most positioned for redemption and happiness, he has the desire to change, and he actually has the willingness to carry that out. It's not too surprising to learn that the author imbued him with some of his own personality traits, and even some of his own personal stories are contained within the story of Levin. I haven't studied up that much on Tolstoy, but it's very clear that he enjoyed being home. He liked taking care of his farm. He was very into nature and agriculture, and he also had very distinct views on politics and faith. All of those he has clearly planted in the character of Levin. As I mentioned just a moment ago, religion and politics are some pretty prevalent themes for Tolstoy. Maybe all Russian novelists, maybe all male novelists of this time period. Without a doubt, those topics are integral to the story, especially when it overlaps with the relationships at its core. There were a couple times in this book that I was starting to feel bored, and that was during a local election and then during a series of social obligations that Levin had to attend. He kind of sees the reality of the facade that the high society people in Moscow are presenting, and if he had stayed in Moscow much longer, doubtless he would have become just like them. That is the implication, but I still felt myself getting the most bored in those particular parts of the story, and I did read a little bit more quickly, and I didn't miss the core of the story. You'll know it when you find it, and it's worth it to hang in there and see what happens for our main characters. The last reason I think that you should read this book is because there is a very decent movie adaptation to look forward to. Even though I recommended that if you want to look up a cast of characters to have in your head as you read this one, I didn't actually pay much attention to that advice myself. I just composed pictures of them in my head, but the one that I had focused on the entire time I was reading was Konstantin Levin, Matthew McFadden, and then I came to find out that Matthew McFadden actually plays Oblonsky, not Konstantin Levin. I'm a little bit disappointed by that, but I'm still looking forward to watching the adaptation. I don't know about you, but if there's a movie adaptation of a classic, I'm more willing to read the classic because I am motivated to finish that and then watch the movie and see what I liked better. When it comes to books and movie adaptations, I really like reading the book first. What about you? Those are my 8 reasons I think you should pick up this hefty classic. Have you read it? What did you think? Is there another classic that you wish more people would read and talk about? And if you haven't read any big classics, but that's something that you'd really like to do as a reader, I want to encourage you to stick around and click to watch the next video where I'll share my best tips for reading a big book. And if you'd like to join me for more conversations about books and their covers, be sure to click that subscribe button, hit like to support my channel, and I will see you in another video soon.